Captain Dorian Rell stood in the observation corridor of the Lancer's Edge, a mid-class transport ship recently recommissioned for coalition use. Through the wide viewport, the swirling golden hues of the Centauri Nebula shimmered, casting faint reflections across his sharp, clean-shaven features. The kind of view that should have brought him peace, except peace was rare these days. Dorian said, a voice behind him. Lieutenant Myra Chen, his second-in-command, approached holding a datapad. "Tell me you've got good news," he muttered, arms crossed. She shook her head. "Better. We've got orders. From Central Nope." She handed him the pad. "From the Diplomatic Oversight Bureau." He glanced at the message. Priority assignment. Level 6 clearance. High-value passenger transport. Departing Wuro 600 from Relay Station 12 to Avelis Prime. No questions, no deviations. Dorian's jaw tightened. They don't even say who or what we're transporting. Nope. Just says we're to meet the passenger at Dock 94 30 minutes before launch. Myra paused. They didn't even mark the species. He sighed, already annoyed. Last time I got an assignment this vague, we ended up hauling a proto-biohazard ambassador with 17 mouths. You said he was charming. I said he smelled like wet compost and gave me migraines. Myra smirked, then straightened. Want me to prep the quarters? No. I'll do it myself. Dorian tapped the pad off. If this goes sideways, I want to know exactly what I'm dealing with. Dock 94. Relay Station 12 was eerily quiet for a place that usually buzzed with loading droids and civilian traffic. When Dorian arrived, only a single black craft, sleek, streamlined, with no visible markings, sat anchored. The moment he stepped onto the deck, the shuttle's ramp hissed open. 3 figures emerged, 2 armor-clad security escorts and 1 cloaked figure between them. Captain Rell, the escort on the left, said, "Yes, your passenger." The cloaked figure stepped forward and lowered her hood. The sight stopped Dorian mid-breath. She looked human almost, but not quite. Her skin shimmered faintly, not with sweat or oil, but like the surface of a pearl catching soft light. Her eyes were a stormy mix of lavender and silver, and her long, dark blue hair shimmered with pale streaks like comet trails. "I am Lise Solari," she said, her voice calm, ethereal. "Thank you for receiving me." "You're welcome," he managed, then looked to the guards. "Anything I should know, she's your responsibility now," the left escort said. He handed over a sealed data chip. "Instructions, coordinates, clearance codes, for your eyes only." Before Dorian could reply, they turned and left without another word. Well, he muttered, that wasn't ominous at all. Once they were aboard, Dorian escorted Lise through the ship. She moved silently, taking in every corridor with watchful eyes. The crew watched her, curious but respectful. Her presence seemed to draw an invisible boundary around her. No one dared speak unless she spoke first. "Your quarters," Dorian said, gesturing to a private cabin outfitted with enhanced biometric security, ambient temperature control, and emergency isolation protocols. Lise tilted her head slightly. "You've gone to great lengths to prepare." "I didn't like the vagueness of the orders," he replied, "so I overcompensated." She stepped into the room and turned to him. "You're cautious. That's good." He lingered in the doorway. "So, you mind telling me why we're heading to Avelis Prime with no details and a ship on full alert?" She studied him, her gaze unreadable. "Do you trust your superiors?" "I follow orders," he said. "That's not what I asked." He hesitated. "I trust some of them. Others, not so much." "Then I'll trust you. A little." She stepped closer. "There are people who want to stop me from reaching Avelis. You won't know them until it's too late. That's all I can say." "Right." He tried not to frown. "Well, you have full access to private channels and food delivery. You'll be safe here." Lise nodded. "Thank you, Captain Rell." He turned to leave, then paused. "Just, Dorian, please. Captain Rell sounds like my father." The first 2 days of travel passed without incident. Lise kept to herself, emerging only during ship's night to walk the observation deck. Dorian checked security logs obsessively, half expecting an assassin to pop out of a cargo crate, but nothing happened. Not even a static burst on the comms. Still, he couldn't shake the tension. On the 3rd night, just as Dorian was settling into the bunk in his cramped quarters, the emergency klaxon blared. "Bridge, we have 3 vessels approaching at high velocity. They're running silent." Dorian was on his feet in seconds, barking into the comm. "Shields up, all hands to stations." Status on those ships, Lieutenant Chen's voice answered terse. Unknown origin, no coalition signature. Looks like modified raider class. Weapon ports exposed. Interceptors, he growled. This far into neutral space? They're not here for a picnic, sir. He was halfway to the bridge when he ran into Lise in the corridor. She was no longer wearing her flowing cloak, but a bodysuit of silvery fibers that clung to her like liquid light. Thin lines traced symmetrical patterns across her skin, bioluminescent conduits glowing softly beneath the surface. They found me, she said quietly. Dorian stopped. You know who they are? They're not pirates. They're mercenaries paid to stop me from reaching Avalis. How the hell did they find us? I don't know, she admitted, but I can help, if you'll let me. He stared at her, then cursed under his breath. Fine, but you stay close to me. The Lancer's edge shook violently as the first blast hit their shields. Lights flickered. Sparks erupted from a console on the bridge as he arrived. Shields at 60%, shouted Chen. They're targeting our engines. Get us to jump range now. They'll disable us before we get a lock. Lise, Dorian turned to her. Whatever help you were offering, I'm listening. Without a word, she strode to the tactical console. As her fingers brushed the screen, alien symbols flickered across it, unreadable, but smooth and fluid. What the hell, Chen started, but Dorian silenced her with a wave. Captain Lise said, I can make us invisible, but you'll have to shut down every active system, including power and comms. That's suicide. It's your only chance. Dorian hesitated, then nodded. Do it. The ship's lights died. Engines went silent. Emergency power shut down. The Lancer's edge drifted through space like a ghost. Only the soft, bioluminescent patterns on Lisa's body lit the darkness. They can't see us anymore, she whispered. I've buried our signal beneath their scanning thresholds, but we'll only have a few minutes. Outside, the raider ships began to drift apart, confused. One veered off course. Another rotated in slow circles as if its sensors were jammed. They've lost us, Chen whispered in disbelief. Dorian exhaled, chest tight. We'll run the moment we get auxiliary back online. Behind him, Lys leaned against the wall, her glow fading slightly. Good, she said softly. We'll need every second. The emergency lights flickered back to life, painting the Lancer's edge in dim orange hues. Dorian Rell stood in silence as auxiliary power thrummed through the corridors, restoring faint warmth and life to the ship's bones. Outside the viewport, the three raider vessels had turned away, confused and rudderless in the vacuum, failing to spot the ghost ship hiding just beneath their noses. On the floor beside the tactical console, Lise Solari knelt on one knee, her chest heaving. The glowing patterns on her skin, so bright minutes before now, pulsed faintly like dying embers. Lise. Dorian crossed the room, crouching beside her. What happened? Are you hurt? I'm fine, she said softly, though her face was pale. The masking field drains energy from me directly. It's not meant for long durations. He looked over his shoulder at Lieutenant Chen. Get medical down here and tell engineering to reroute power back to the primary engines, but keep our signature low. Aye, Captain Chen said, already moving. Dorian returned his attention to Lise. Why didn't you tell me you could do that? That you're augmented, enhanced. Her lips curled faintly. Because you would have asked questions I'm not allowed to answer. You're asking me to risk my crew, my ship, and myself. That buys me some answers. She met his gaze evenly. You'll get them, but not here, not yet. The lift doors opened, and the ship's medic corporal, Eden Vole, rushed in with a portable scanner. He scanned Lise quickly, his brows furrowing, as unusual readings flooded the device. She's stable, I think. But these biosignatures aren't human, not even close. Dorian rose, stepping between Iden and Lise. She's under my protection. Do what you need to stabilize her, but no poking, prodding, or sample taking. Iden hesitated. Understood, Captain. A few minutes later, Lys was escorted back to her quarters. Dorian stood just outside the door, watching her sit on the edge of her bunk, a wool blanket draped around her shoulders. Before leaving, she looked up at him. Thank you for trusting me. He didn't reply right away. His jaw worked as if chewing on something unspoken. Get some rest. We'll talk when you're ready. Then the door hissed shut between them. Dorian didn't sleep that night. He wandered the corridors, checking every system, visiting every crew member, replaying every detail of the ambush in his mind. The mystery of Lis Solari unraveled like a slow-burn fuse. He had transported senators, assassins, diplomats, but none like her. At Oro 400 ship time, he returned to the bridge. Lieutenant Chen was there, bleary-eyed but alert. No sign of pursuit. "We're holding course for Avelis Prime," she reported. "Engine power is stable. Life support still running on reduced output." "Good." Dorian sat in the command chair. "We'll stay low profile. We don't know if those bastards will come back." Chen gave him a glance. "She saved our asses, sir." He nodded. "Yeah, she did. But she's a walking enigma. I don't like not knowing who's on my ship." "You ever consider she might be just as scared of us?" He didn't answer. By midday, Lis emerged again. This time she wasn't cloaked in armor or shadow. She walked barefoot through the ship's mess hall in simple gray fabric that clung to her like water. The glowing markings on her arms had faded to a dim gold. Dorian met her there, waiting with 2 mugs of rehydrated herbal tea. "I thought you might need something warm," he said, sliding 1 mug across the table. She sat across from him, fingers curling around the mug with obvious gratitude. "You thought right." For a moment, they drank in silence. Then Dorian leaned forward. "I need to know, who are you really?" Lis tilted her head. "I already told you my name." "No, I mean what you are. I've never seen tech like that, those markings, that ability to hide the whole damn ship." She hesitated. Then, as if making a choice, she set her cup down. "My people are called the Valari. You won't find them in your coalition databases. We've remained hidden for a reason. And what reason is that we're one of the last surviving enclaves from before the Great Disjunction. When the ancient species fell and left ruins behind, the Valari didn't die out, we went dark. Buried ourselves in the quiet spaces between stars." Dorian blinked. "You're pre-disjunction?" Lis nodded. "We were born from what came before. My abilities, what you call tech, aren't technology. They're biological, evolutionary. We adapted to exist without being found. So why reveal yourself now?" She looked him dead in the eye. "Because someone else is trying to bring the disjunction back." Dorian went cold. The disjunction, the collapse of interstellar unity, the age of ancient wars, dead star empires, lost civilizations was more myth than history. Every spacer had heard the stories. Few believed them. He didn't speak for a long moment. Then in Avelis Prime, "It's not just a planet, it's a vault. My people sealed something there generations ago. A weapon of potential so vast it could fracture half the sector. Some faction found part of it and is trying to unlock the rest. And you're going to stop them." Lis didn't blink. "Yes. But I can't do it alone." Later that night, as the ship coasted through a safe corridor near a collapsed star cluster, Dorian found himself alone in the observation lounge. He watched the debris of the shattered system drift like ancient ghosts, fragments of once great worlds now reduced to cosmic dust. "You believe me," came a voice from behind. He turned. Lis stood there, arms folded loosely across her chest, her eyes luminous, even in the low light. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I believe you believe it, and that's enough for now." She walked to the window beside him. "You're different from most humans I've met. You've met many a few. Scientists, spies, soldiers. Most were afraid of what they didn't understand." "Are you dangerous?" he asked her. "Yes," she said, "but only to those who try to harm me or what I'm protecting." Silence fell between them again, this one soft and unthreatening. Dorian finally said, "What are those markings? The ones on your skin?" "They're called Vasari, living light veins. They're part nervous system, part energy regulator. They store resonance data, absorb kinetic force, and link me to other Valari through deep frequency bonds." He whistled softly. "No offense, but that's freaky as hell." Her lips quirked in a smile. "That's what the scientist said, right before he tried to cut one out of me." Dorian turned to her. "He didn't succeed, I assume?" "No," she said flatly. "He didn't." That night, the temperature in the ship dropped again. Life support was rationing power. In Dorian's quarters, the heater had failed entirely. He lay curled in a thermal blanket reviewing sensor data when a knock came at his door. It slid open and Lis stood there, a second blanket wrapped around her. My quarters are freezing, she said. Your medical officer said the other cabin heaters are offline. I can find you a backup bunk. I already tried. They're colder than mine. She hesitated. I don't mean to intrude, Captain, but she glanced at the thick thermal blanket draped over his bunk. Is there space for two? Dorian froze. After a beat, he nodded slowly. There is. Liz stepped inside, closing the door softly behind her. The interior of Dorian's quarters had fallen into hush and shadow. The failing heaters couldn't keep pace with the cold leaking through the bulkheads. The soft hum of emergency power was the only sound, low and pulsing like a distant heartbeat. Lice stepped toward the bunk, her silvery eyes reflecting faint light from the console. The blanket around her shoulders slipped slightly, revealing the pale gold glow of her Vasari, the bioluminescent lines tracing her skin like constellations in motion. Dorian looked away respectfully and muttered, I didn't expect a diplomatic mission to turn into an exercise in shared body heat. Liz offered a quiet smile. I didn't expect to feel safer beside a human than among my own people. That caught him. He glanced up, meeting her eyes. I thought you said your people were hidden untouchable. We were, she said as she unwrapped herself and slipped into the bunk. But even hidden stars cast shadows, and not all Valori agree on how long we should remain in them. Dorian settled beside her carefully. The bunk was narrow and their bodies brushed shoulders, legs the shared warmth immediate and tangible. He turned his back to give her space, but her voice floated close to his ear. Thank you for trusting me, for letting me stay. I don't make a habit of spooning passengers, he muttered. She let out a quiet laugh, breath warm against his neck. In my culture, this level of contact usually happens after extensive soul-sharing rituals. Dorian raised an eyebrow. And in human culture, we call this just trying not to freeze to death. They both laughed softly, awkward, genuine. Then silence again. After a few moments, Lisa's hand brushed his forearm under the blanket. Not an advance, more like reassurance. A tether. Do all human ships feel this cold, she asked. Only when they're half dead, he replied. We took more damage than I thought. Engineering's trying to patch the primary systems without burning through our reserves. I might be able to help, she murmured. With the systems, no. With the cold. She paused. We emit resonance heat when in close proximity to a bonded consciousness. I think you qualify. Wait, what does that mean? Before he could finish, he felt her press gently against his back, the glow of her Vasari increasing in intensity and temperature. A deep, pleasant warmth radiated outward from where her skin touched his. It felt like sunlight filtered through water, soothing, enveloping. That's really effective, he admitted, breath slowing. You regulate warmth with machines, she said. We use each other. Clever system. Evolution doesn't favor the cold, she replied softly. Not in deep space. They slept like that, body heat and biolight mingling beneath the same blanket. Dorian woke first hours later to the smell of ozone and the faint sting of warmth creeping back into the room. Auxiliary systems had stabilized. His bunkmate still slept beside him, her breathing shallow and rhythmic, her Vasari pulsing gently along her arms and neck. She looked peaceful, almost human, but the closer he looked, the more alien she became, her bone structure. Too symmetrical, her eyes too deep, her skin faintly translucent. He moved slowly, careful not to wake her, and slipped out from under the blanket. As he reclothed and strapped his holster back on, a voice rose behind him. You move quietly. For someone your size. Dorian turned. Liz sat up, brushing loose strands of moonlight hair from her face. Military training, he said. She nodded, eyes following his movements. You regret letting me stay? Not at all, he said honestly. But you and I both know this arrangement complicates things. You mean politics, I mean survival. He sat on the edge of the bunk facing her. There's something chasing you, someone who wants what you're hiding, and now they'll come through me to get to you. She looked down. They'll try. Dorian leaned forward. Tell me the rest of it, Lise. No more vague warnings or ancestral riddles. What's really on Avelis Prime? What are we carrying toward the edge of this war zone? She met his eyes. A decision, she said. A weapon that isn't a weapon. A chance to reshape the way our species interact, Valari, humans, others. It's old. Too old to trust in the wrong hands. Dorian frowned. So it's a device. It's a seed, she corrected. A biomechanical construct that, when activated, resonates with the genetic blueprint of its wielder. It adapts to them, enhances them. His eyes narrowed. And you're the only one who can use it. I was designed to be. Designed, Lise hesitated. The Valari haven't just survived. We've perfected ourselves. Each generation is born with adjustments tuned to roles. I was bred for connection, to carry the pattern forward. Dorian let that sink in. You're a living key. She nodded. And you're the only one I've found who doesn't see me as a tool. Later that day, the Lancer's Edge dropped out of FTL near a swirling asteroid belt. Their route to Ablis had been disrupted. A navigational warning now blocked the main corridor, a collapsed trade route riddled with electromagnetic interference. Dorian stood at the navigation console, frowning at the readouts. It's either reroute 2 parsecs and add 3 days, Chen said, or cut through the Grave Sea. Lise walked onto the bridge just as Dorian responded. We don't have 3 days, not with raiders and whatever's behind them on our tail. The Grave Sea is dangerous, Chen said. Asteroids, radiation surges, phase drift. Lise stepped forward. I can guide us. Both officers turned. You've flown through it, Dorian asked. Valari sanctuaries exist in places others avoid. This storm is known to us. You sure? I'm sure. Dorian nodded. Plot the course. Hours later, the Lancer's Edge crept into the Grave Sea like a ghost. Jagged asteroids shimmered with bluish radiation. Static warped the stars. Time itself flickered near the edge of the belt, throwing sensor readings into chaos. On the bridge, Lys stood beside Dorian, eyes closed, fingertips resting on the console. Her Vasari glowed in sync with the pulse of distant stellar drift. How are you doing that? Dorian asked under his breath. I'm listening, she replied, to what the stars, the frequencies. They hum like a song, and if you're quiet enough, they lead you through. He looked at her and for a brief moment forgot everything else. The war, the mission, the danger. She opened her eyes. We're not far now. Dorian nodded. Good. Then just as he turned to issue new orders, a proximity alert shrieked. 3 red dots lit up the tactical screen. Fast maneuverable ships cutting a predatory arc toward them through the storm. Unknown vessels approaching fast, Chen shouted. They found us again. Dorian's jaw clenched. Shields up. All power to evasive thrusters. He turned to Lise. You said this place was hidden. It is, she said slowly, eyes narrowing. Unless someone's guiding them. Red sirens pulsed across the Lancer's Edge, bathing the bridge in flashes of warning. Dorian slammed his palm onto the console. Evasive maneuvers hard roll now. The ship banked violently as plasma bolts screamed past the hull, lighting the asteroid field with thunderous energy. The crew gripped onto railings and consoles as inertia threatened to tear them from their stations. Shields at 62%, Lieutenant Chen shouted, hull integrity holding barely. On the tactical display, the 3 enemy ships split into a pincer formation, maneuvering with terrifying precision through the hazardous debris of the Grave Sea. They shouldn't be able to fly like that in here, Chen growled. Lys was already at Dorian's side scanning the signatures. Her silvery eyes glowed with heightened intensity. They're Valari craft, she said softly. Dorian turned sharply. Valari. You said your people were peaceful. Most are, she replied, her voice tinged with dread. But their patterns are corrupted. Traditionalists, those who believe in preservation through control. Great, Dorian muttered, space fascists with stealth engines. Lys ignored the sarcasm. She stared at the tactical screen, her expression unreadable. They've modified our technology to operate in high-phase drift. No coalition ship could keep up with them in here. Dorian snapped back into command. Chen arm phase disruptors. Match their movements. If we can't outrun them, we outthink them. And if that fails, she asked, then we make them bleed. Inside the belly of the asteroid field, the Lancer's Edge dived between 2 jagged spires of rock, scraping past one with a screech of metal and plasma sparks. Behind them, the Valari traditionalist vessels closed the gap with unnerving synchronicity. Brace, Dorian shouted. Another blast rocked the ship. One of the monitors exploded in a shower of sparks. Smoke filled the cockpit. They've targeted our thruster vanes, Chen cried. We're losing fine maneuverability. Lice stepped forward, gripping the railing. We can't outrun them in a straight chase. No kidding, Dorian snapped. Suggestions. There's a hidden rift deeper in the grave sea, she said quickly. A subspace tear that the Coalition doesn't chart, it's too unstable. But if we reach it, I can activate the Volari beacon. It'll cloak our signal. A cloak. Dorian raised an eyebrow. Why didn't you lead with that? Because the rift's surrounded by plasma geysers and gravitational anomalies. Piloting through it is suicide if you're even slightly off course. Dorian turned to Chen, his jaw set. Plot the coordinates. We're going rift diving. Chen glanced between them. I really hate this job. Moments later, the Lancer's Edge banked hard, pulling toward a dense cluster of tumbling asteroids. Flashes of lightning laced the clouds ahead, static storms arcing like electric gods in the void. Ahead, the rift came into view, a crack in reality, shimmering like a wound in space, spewing soft violet light that pulsed with chaotic rhythm. Energy flared in bursts, sending tendrils of distorted gravity writhing in every direction. Stellar gods, Chen whispered. Welcome to the Screaming Throat, Lise said. Dorian swallowed. Sounds cozy. The enemy vessels weren't far behind. Two flanked them again. The third took position behind, herding them like prey. We don't have time, Dorian said. Get that beacon ready. Lise nodded, closing her eyes. Her bioluminescent Vasari markings brightened, pulsing in rhythm with the subspace tear. She extended her hands, fingers splayed over the console like a living conduit. She's interfacing with our systems, Chen said in awe. She's not just running code, she's merging with it. Dorian kept his eyes forward. Just keep us alive long enough for it to work. They plunged into the chaos. Inside the rift, everything warped. The cockpit twisted like a funhouse mirror. Colors shifted outside the windows. Blues became oranges up, became sideways space, sang like a chorus of broken stars. Dorian's hand stayed steady on the controls. He gritted his teeth as pressure crushed against the ship's frame. She's holding together, Chen shouted. But then a shriek from the sensors. One of the enemy vessels had followed them in. They're matching our slip signature, Chen said grimly. Then we lead them into the deep. Dorian angled the edge toward the heart of the anomaly. Behind him, Lisa's body shook violently, her markings burning brighter and brighter. Sweat glistened on her brow. She was glowing like a living beacon now. She's going to burn out, Chen warned. Dorian didn't turn. She won't. She's stronger than she looks. A flare of white light engulfed the ship as they crossed into the core of the rift. For a moment, the universe ceased to exist. Silence. Then stars. Normal stars. The ship shuddered, stabilizing. Outside, the asteroid field was gone. They floated in calm, dark space. Where are we? Chen asked. Lys opened her eyes, dimming breath shallow. We're in a Volari null pocket, she said. A sanctuary bubble outside charted space. They won't find us here. Status of the third ship, Dorian asked. Chen looked stunned. Gone. It didn't make it through. Dorian turned back to Lys. You all right? She nodded weakly. That took more energy than expected. But we're safe, for now. He reached out instinctively and touched her arm. Don't do that again unless you have to. Her eyes flicked toward him, tired but amused. Captain giving orders outside chain of command. Consider it personal protocol. Later in the infirmary, Lys lay on a biobed, her Vasari patterns faint but stable. Dorian sat nearby, watching her quietly. You're a puzzle, he said. She cracked one eye open. That's a compliment in Volari. Then let me add, you're a terrifyingly competent glowing puzzle with a habit of drawing fire. A weak smile tugged at her lips. You're not bad at flying through hell. They sat in silence for a while. Then Dorian spoke. Back there, when you said you were bred for connection, that the seed responds to someone worthy, was that really about lineage? She turned her head, fully meeting his gaze. No, it's about resonance, alignment, the right frequencies. I thought I needed Volari blood to awaken it. But it responded to you, not to your genes, but your choices. Dorian raised an eyebrow. That sounds suspiciously like destiny. No, she said quietly. It's something rarer. Trust. He looked down, uncertain how to respond. So she took his hand, and for a brief moment he felt a pulse, not from her skin, but from somewhere deeper. like two notes harmonizing for the first time. The Lancer's Edge drifted silently within the Valari null pocket, a sanctuary suspended in dead space. No stars pierced the blackness. No planets offered light or gravity, just the ship and the lingering weight of what they had just survived. In the command deck, Captain Dorian Reeve reviewed a pulsing map displayed as a shimmering projection above his desk. Each dot and line represented known coalition trade routes, Valari territories, pirate strongholds, and border surveillance arcs. He stared at them, eyes calculating, jaw tight. They were officially off-grid. Lieutenant Chen entered quietly, a steaming cup in her hands. "You haven't slept," she said. "Can't afford to. There are too many unknowns. And we're not just ferrying supplies anymore. We're carrying a galactic chess piece who glows in the dark and talks to machines with her brain." Chen set the cup beside him and sat opposite. "You trust her?" Dorian didn't answer immediately. He rubbed his temples. "I trust that she's not the enemy," he said at last. "But that's not the same as understanding what she's doing, or what she really is." Chen nodded slowly. "She saved us back there. I've served under you for 5 years, and I've never seen a maneuver that insane work. She also fried half the navigation system doing it. We're limping. I'd feel better if I knew where she was taking us next. Bridge chatter says she's recovering in the observation bay. Alone." Dorian stood. "Then let's stop guessing." Observation deck Lai stood at the center of the bay, bathed in the shifting glow of the Valari sanctuary field. Outside the transparent dome, the void stretched endlessly. The null pocket's energy pulsed gently. Neither time nor space moved the same in here. Her skin shimmered with renewed strength. The orange and violet bioluminescent lines that traced her arms and spine pulsed with slow, deliberate rhythms. They weren't just markings, they were language, memory, identity. She heard Dorian's footsteps before he spoke. "You didn't tell me everything." She turned, her silvery hair cascading down her back. She had changed into a new outfit, fluid and faintly metallic like woven light. "I didn't lie." "No," Dorian said, "but you omitted. And that's worse." She regarded him calmly. "What do you want to know?" He stepped closer, arms folded. "Why are the Valari traditionalists hunting you? Why did the Rift recognize you as its key? And what's this about a seed, some dormant technology that suddenly came online because of me?" Lise exhaled softly. She motioned to the starless sky beyond the dome. 1,000 years ago, the Valari were unified by something we called the Source. Not a weapon, not a government, a harmonized consciousness like a shared soul. Not mind control, not tyranny, just connection. Emotional, sensory, spiritual. We called it the Great Weave. She paused. But after centuries, that unity collapsed. Ideologies fractured. Some believed our strength was purity of form, traditional bloodlines. Others believed we should evolve, connect beyond our own species, share the weave. Dorian's expression darkened. "So you're part of that second group?" Lise nodded. "My mother was the last prime of the weave. She died during the sundering when the factions turned against each other. I was a child. My caretakers encoded the seed in my genome, a dormant pattern that could awaken the weave again, but only when resonance with another was detected." "Resonance," Dorian repeated. "You mean a..." Match Lai stepped closer. "A bond. Not just physical, but willful. Someone who chooses to protect instead of control. Someone who defies authority when it becomes tyranny. Someone who sees me as more than a political symbol." Dorian swallowed. "And you think that's me?" "The seed thinks so." He stared at her. "That's one hell of a burden to lay on someone, because he picked up a blade and refused to let you die." Lisa's eyes softened. "You didn't just pick up a blade. You made a choice. When every rational instinct told you not to, you still chose me." Silence stretched between them. Outside, a brief flare rippled across the sanctuary field like a distant memory, brushing the edges of thought. Engineering bay, hours later. Chen hunched over the auxiliary console, rerouting damaged power lines and manually recalibrating the fusion core. Sweat streaked her brow. "I need hands over here," she barked. On it replied Yarrick, the ship's junior tech, hauling a cable spool twice his weight. "I thought this was a transport mission," he groaned. "Now we're dodging assassins and hiding in ancient alien hideouts." "Welcome to the big leagues," Chen muttered. As the team worked, the deck suddenly flickered. Not a systems error, something deeper. An energy pulse that thrummed through every bulkhead like a heartbeat. What was that? Yarrick asked. Chen looked toward the ship's core. It's not us. Bridge red lights flashed. Captain, we've got movement. Dorian ran to the helm. Report. Sensor sweep detected minimal but patterned. Something just pinged our position outside the null pocket. Dorian's heart sank. They found us. Lyse arrived moments later, her expression grim. They shouldn't have been able to track us here. Well, they did, Chen's voice crackled over the comm. And either we hold position and wait to get boarded, or we prep to jump. We don't have coordinates plotted, the navigator objected. We'd be blind jumping into uncharted space. Lyse turned to Dorian. I can guide us. The weave has reawakened. There's a sanctuary point, an ancient Valari cradle near the Sirius driftline. It's old, hidden even from most of my kind. But it will let us reconnect. Dorian hesitated. You sure you can find it? Lyse placed her hand on his shoulder. I'm not sure of anything anymore, but I can feel it, and I trust you. Dorian turned to the crew. Prepare for manual drift jump. Full override. We follow her signal. The ship shuddered as its engines reactivated, groaning with strain. Outside, the edge of the null pocket rippled, and beyond, three angular ships emerged from stealth scanning, sweeping closer. Now Lyse, Dorian shouted. She closed her eyes, and for a moment the entire ship felt like it breathed with her. A pulse, a surge, and Lancer's Edge vanished into starlight. The Lancer's Edge emerged from the jump with a groan, space bending around the hull like a rebounding rubber band. The vessel shuddered once, then settled into silence. Navigation lights flickered back to life, casting long beams through the void. But this void wasn't empty. Ahead of them, nestled between the fractured bands of an ancient asteroid field and the glowing wisps of interstellar dust, floated a massive ethereal structure. A station, or perhaps a temple of impossible geometry. Its walls were built of living crystal, semi-transparent, and refracting light in 1,000 impossible ways. Vines of soft, bioluminescent tendrils crept along the superstructure, pulsing in rhythm like a breathing heart. Is that? Chen asked softly from the bridge. Lyse stepped forward, her eyes wide with awe. The cradle of Kareth, the place where the first weave began. Dorian stared. It looks like it's alive, it is, Lyse whispered. Part organism, part technology. It exists between what you call matter and memory. Wonderful, Jackson muttered behind them. A sentient spaceship cathedral in a haunted asteroid belt. Just another Tuesday. As the ship approached, the cradle responded. Lights flared along the surface in intricate sequences. Harmonic pulses echoed through the edge's systems, not intrusive, but exploratory. Curious, like a giant eye opening. Is it scanning us? Dorian asked. No, Lyse said. It's welcoming us. She placed her hand on the control panel, and without touching a key, the ship's systems responded. A new flight path appeared, curved and spiraling, guiding them toward a hangar bay whose doors were opening like petals unfolding. Chen, Dorian said, still watching the screen, bring us in gently. And get the Marines on alert just in case this temple decides it doesn't like guests after all. Inside the cradle, the Lancer's Edge settled onto a smooth, glowing platform. The docking bay was cavernous but not mechanical. The floor shifted slightly under their feet like dense, flexible coral. No visible seams, no lights. Yet everything was illuminated from within in soft blues and oranges. Reminds me of standing in someone's brain, Jackson muttered. Dorian and Lyse led the small landing party, flanked by 2 Marine guards and Chen. Lyse walked with a sense of gravity, reverence. There should be a core, she said. A central chamber where the cradle maintains its memory and function. Memory. Dorian raised an eyebrow. This structure has existed since before your species split from primates. It remembers every person who's ever touched the weave, including my ancestors. As they stepped deeper into the cradle, the corridor shifted subtly around them, widening, curving, guiding them. The architecture responded to Lyse's presence, recognizing her as something familiar. It's changing shape for you, Chen whispered. It's reading her, Dorian said. Like a fingerprint, No Lyse corrected gently. Like a song. The core, they entered a chamber vast enough to contain the Lancer's Edge itself. At the center floated a crystalline monolith suspended in midair by invisible forces. Surrounding it were countless fragments, shards of glowing stone, each spinning and orbiting like tiny moons. When Lee stepped forward, a low resonant tone vibrated through the chamber. The floating shards shifted, rearranged, and formed a spiral stairway leading toward the monolith. She turned to Dorian. "I need to go alone." Dorian frowned. "Why this part of the cradle only responds to those who carry the seed? If anyone else tries to interact with it, the system might perceive them as a threat. I don't like letting you out of my sight. You've trusted me this far." She smiled faintly. "Trust me one step further." Dorian gave a reluctant nod. "Be careful." As Liz ascended the steps, she felt the core's energy wrap around her like a current. Not just sound or light, but memory sensation feeling. 1,000 lives, 1,000,000 thoughts, all echoing in the walls around her. The monolith shimmered as she approached. Then contact. She placed her palm on the surface, and the world fell away. Inside the weave. It wasn't a dream. It wasn't real. It was everything. Lys stood suspended in an infinite field of stars, her body glowing with the activated seed. Her thoughts extended outward, and others reached back. She felt the presence of the ancient primes, her mother, the voices of the fallen, memories encoded in crystal, in energy, in emotion, and then a new presence, one that wasn't Valari, Dorian. His mind brushed hers, tentative but strong. A bridge had opened between them, something her people believed impossible. "You're in here," she whispered. "I don't know how," came his answer, more sensation than sound. "I just followed you." "It's not supposed to work this way," she said. Maybe it never worked this way because no one ever tried. In that moment, she saw him truly. Not just his memories, but his essence, his resolve, his fears, the battles he never spoke of, the guilt he carried from soldiers lost under his command, the scars he never let heal. He saw her too, loneliness, stretching across lifetimes, the weight of prophecy, the crushing responsibility of being the last chance. And they didn't look away. The core pulsed and accepted them both. Reality returned. Lys gasped, staggering back from the monolith. Dorian caught her, though she didn't remember him climbing the steps. "You okay?" he asked, breathless. She looked at him with tears in her eyes, but they weren't sadness. "It worked," she said. "It chose us." Back on the ship, Chen reported elevated energy readings throughout the cradle. "The entire station seems to be reawakening," she told Dorian. "There's a planetary transmission being prepared, broadcasting to all Valari beacon points across the sector. Message just coordinates. Here, and one word: reunion. Elsewhere in the dark." On a battleship cloaked in the shadows of the Zyran expanse, a tall figure stood before a monitor. The symbol of the Valari Traditionalist Council flickered across the screen. "They found the cradle. Yessa's subordinate confirmed. And the girl, she has activated the core with a human." The figure's expression twisted with disdain. "Then it's worse than we feared." He turned to a control panel and keyed in an encrypted command. "Prepare the blade fleet. We burn the cradle to ash." The corridors of the cradle pulsed with increasing brilliance, the living structure responding to the reawakening of its core. Everywhere Dorian and the Lancer's Edge crew turned, they saw evidence of changed walls shifting subtly, ambient light, growing warmer, more intense. What was once dormant now buzzed with purpose. Lys moved with serene clarity. Her skin still glowed with gentle tracery of gold from her communion with the monolith, and her expression held both awe and growing concern. "It's calling them," she murmured, standing at one of the crystalline viewing alcoves. "Every surviving Valari who still remembers the old songs. They will hear it now. And they will come," good Dorian said beside her, arms crossed. "Maybe we can finally stop running and start rallying." But Lys didn't look comforted. "They will come, yes, but not just the faithful. The traditionalists will hear it too. They'll know we've unlocked the core. They'll come to destroy us." Dorian's jaw tightened. "Then we need to prepare." Back on the bridge, Chen ran diagnostics while Jackson coordinated defensive preparations. The cradle offered more than shelter. It was integrating with the Lancer's Edge, sharing knowledge and system upgrades that transformed the vessel's capabilities in hours. Shields are now layered with something akin to harmonic phasing, Chen reported, baffled. "Not sure how to describe it, But its like will phase slightly out of sync with reality when struck. Damage should pass through harmlessly, should Dorian asked, raising an eyebrow. I said should Chen repeated, hands raised. This is alien magic tech, sir. I'm doing my best. Jackson stepped forward. We've got movement. A holographic projection appeared, a swarm of ships black and crimson piercing the edge of the nebula. Identification Valari Blade Fleet, Chen said grimly. That's the traditionalist war armada, their early Dorian muttered. Or eager, Jackson replied. Either way, they're headed straight for us. Within the cradle's heart, Lise stood alone beneath the core monolith. Her thoughts echoed through the reawakened neural lattice of the structure, searching, calling. One by one responses came. Light forms, voices, faint echoes of Valari across the stars. Survivors, outcasts, refugees. They had heard, but their voices trembled with fear. They're coming, one whispered. They'll kill us all, said another. I thought we were alone. And now, Lys pressed her palm against the monolith again. Come home, she whispered. Let them come, but do not hide. The future we believed in isn't lost. It begins now. Hours later, War Council. In a repurposed crystalline chamber that now served as a command hub, Dorian stood with his core crew and Lys. A hollow map of the surrounding space floated above a round table of light. Enemy forces are 3 hours out, Chen said. Based on speed and formation, they're preparing for orbital bombardment. They plan to level the cradle, Lys, said voice cold. They know it's the last artifact that proves your people's shared legacy, Dorian said. And now they know you've activated it. We can't win a straight fight, Jackson pointed out. They outgun us 10-1. Then we don't fight straight, Dorian said. He turned to Lys. Is there anything this place can do to defend itself? Lys nodded. The cradle was once the heart of the weave. It doesn't attack, it sings, and it remembers everything. If I interface fully, I might be able to activate ancient defensive harmonics. Dorian frowned. What does that mean, I'll become a conduit for the weave, she said softly. It will use me to shape its defense. Will that hurt you? Lys didn't answer at first. Then I don't know. Dorian stepped forward gently, taking her hands. Don't. This is what I was born for, Dorian. My entire life has led to this. I'm not walking away now, not when I've finally found you. His jaw clenched, emotion catching in his throat. Then we do this together. The Blade Fleet arrives. A ripple tore through the edge of space as dozens of black ships exited hyperspace, blotting out the stars like a swarm of locusts. At their head flew the flagship Torment of Silence, sleek and angular, bristling with weaponry and command arrays. On its bridge stood a tall Valari figure, clad in ceremonial black armor, etched with blood-red script, Chancellor Kezrak, the traditionalist warlord. The cradle sings, he snarled, staring at the luminous pulses on his screen, and the seed-bearer dares defile it with human filth. He turned to his communications officer. Ready the storm cannons. Glass that relic before more heretics answer its call. Within the cradle, Lys stood before the monolith. This time, Dorian stood beside her, not outside the system, but within it. Their hands clasped, their minds aligned. Together they connected. The core blazed with light. The walls of the cradle pulsed in response, each harmonic a defense node reactivating. Shields formed living, resonating energy around the station. And then, something more. Echoes appeared, not ships, not people. Projections of ancient Valari defenders rendered in light and force. Echoes of warriors from the weave's height. They moved with grace, wielding blades of resonant energy drifting through space like avenging spirits. The cradle had summoned its memory, and its memory remembered how to fight. Battle commences. The Blade Fleet opened fire. Waves of plasma and mass driver rounds struck the cradle's shields and passed through harmlessly. Harmonic distortions rippled the impacts away. Dorian, still connected to the monolith, guided the defense grid. The weave responded instantly. Echo warriors intercepted incoming missiles, slicing them apart. Tendrils of energy reached from the cradle to lash at enemy ships, disabling engines and detonating weapons before they could fire. On the bridge of the edge, Chen laughed. This is insane. We're fighting ghosts with music, Jackson barked over comms. They're flanking, sending fighters to breach the cradle. Dorian heard it, saw it, and Lys became the cradle. She sang, not words, not notes, but emotion, loss, hope, unity. And from the core, an aurora of force rippled outward, repelling the boarding craft in shimmering waves. On the Bladefleet Bridge, Chancellor Kezrak's face twisted in rage. They defy the old blood. They pollute the legacy with off-world lies. Sir, his second warned another ship has arrived. Kezrak turned and froze. A ragtag vessel emerged from hyperspace, then another, and another. Valari refugee ships, dozens of them, piloted by exiles, survivors, outcasts, drawn by the cradle's call. Dorian and Lys break connection. The battle turned. The Blade Fleet began to fracture, not just from the cradle's defense, but because their soldiers hesitated. Some refused to fire. Others sabotaged their own ships. The unity Kezrak had enforced for decades crumbled in moments of doubt. On the ground, Dorian and Lys broke their link with the core, their bodies trembling with exhaustion. "You did it," Dorian gasped. "We did it," Lys said. Then she collapsed into his arms. Aftermath. The cradle stood, the Blade Fleet broken. Half of its ships had fled. Others had surrendered. Kezrak himself had vanished in the chaos. The Valari exiles docked at the cradle, their faces streaked with tears as they stepped onto ancestral soil. For the first time in generations, they were home. Later that night, Dorian sat beside Lys's bed. She slept peacefully, her body recovering from the massive energy discharge of the weave. He held her hand. The tracery of gold still pulsed faintly beneath her skin. Jackson entered quietly. "Reconstruction teams are underway," he reported. "Some of the exiles want to settle permanently. The council's already discussing a new capital here." Dorian nodded. "Good. This place deserves a future." He looked back at Lys. And so does she. The days following the Battle of the Cradle blurred together in a whirl of rebuilding reunions and uncertain diplomacy. Once a hidden relic on the edge of forgotten space, the cradle had become a beacon and a battlefield. Now it stood as a crossroads between civilizations. For Dorian and Lys, it was also the calm before another storm. The Council of Return. The central amphitheater of the cradle, once dormant for millennia, now pulsed with life. Holographic banners of a dozen Valari clans shimmered in the air, reactivated by the cradle systems in recognition of the returning exiles. Dorian stood on a raised platform flanked by Lys and several of the Lancer's Edge crew. Before them sat the newly assembled Council of Return, a mix of old guard Valari leaders, cautious exiles, and youthful hopefuls who had only known the weave through stories. There was tension. Some council members wore expressions of awe as they glanced toward the monolith beyond the transparent walls. Others bore suspicion, even resentment, especially toward Dorian. "He is not one of us," muttered Counselor. Jek tore his words deliberately loud, and yet he commands the cradle's defenses like he was bred from its soil. "He's earned that right," Lys said, her voice steady. "Without Captain Rourke, the cradle would be space debris. You'd be giving speeches in a vacuum." "I understand your loyalty," Lys said, another counselor, older and softer in tone, "but the monolith accepted a human. That has never happened in our recorded history." "Exactly," Lys replied. "Which means we've entered a chapter beyond our history." "After the council, that went well," Dorian said dryly as he and Lys walked down a garden path, flanked by crystalline flowers and bioluminescent ferns. "They'll come around," she said. "You know how the Valari are with change." He snorted. "Funny. From where I'm standing, you're changing everything." Lys smiled, but the expression faltered as her gaze drifted skyward. High above the protective veil around the cradle shimmered faintly, the only thing hiding them from what remained of the Blade Fleet. "We bought ourselves time," she said quietly. "But Kezrak isn't gone, and neither are his allies. You think he'll return, I know it." Dorian glanced at her. "And what about us?" Lys stopped walking. "What about us? I mean," he gestured vaguely. "I came here to deliver you to a station. Since then, we've been through assassination attempts, a warship chase, a spiritual awakening, and a half-baked revolution. I'm just trying to figure out where I stand in your world now." Lys's eyes softened. "You are my world now." Midnight visions. That night, while the cradle slept under the twin moons of the Valari system, Lys awoke gasping for breath. The dreams had returned, visions from the core, But this time they weren't just memories. They were warnings. She stumbled barefoot to the central chamber and pressed her palm against the monolith. "Show me." Flashes struck her consciousness like lightning bolts. Ships dozens emerging from black space. Fires raining down on the cradle. Kezrak cloaked in void armor holding a new weapon, something ancient, something stolen. The dreams coalesced into a single image, a rift being opened deep in the weave, a place called the Sundering Gate. Liz pulled her hand away, trembling. "Dorian," she whispered. The Sundering Gate. When the crew of the Lancer's Edge assembled the next morning, Lee stood at the center of the map room, eyes grim. "There's another ancient site," she said. "It was hidden even from me. A fracture point in the weave sealed long ago. If Kezrak unlocks it, he can sever the core's connection to the weave permanently." Chen leaned over the console. "Coordinates deep space close to the collapsed star cluster of Theros Prime. Radiation levels are extreme. Even approaching would be dangerous." "Then we'll need shields at full and stealth on standby," Jackson said. "We'll also need help," Lise added. "The cradle's defenses are strong but static. If the enemy moves against the Sundering Gate, we can't fight them alone." Dorian nodded. "So we divide forces. Jackson stays here with the cradle's defensive fleet. Lise and I take the edge to Theros Prime." Jackson raised an eyebrow. "You sure about that?" Captain Dorian looked at Lise, then back to Jackson. "Positive." Journey to Theros Prime. The stars thinned as they traveled into the deep void. The jump to Theros Prime was grueling, navigating gravitational eddies and residual bursts of radiation from long-dead stars. But the edge, now enhanced with cradle-grown harmonics, held firm. As they dropped out of FTL, a hush fell across the bridge. The Sundering Gate loomed before them, a massive ring-like construct shattered and floating in fragments. The structure pulsed with unstable energy, its center flickering between dark and light like a dying star. Dorian stared. "This thing's massive." "It predates the weave," Lise said softly. "My ancestors feared it so much they buried it in legend." A proximity alarm chirped. Chen cursed. Multiple heat signatures. Small craft, unmarked stealth configuration. Lisa's face paled. "Kezrak's already here." Dorian stood. Red alert. Battle stations. Ghosts in the void. The enemy ships moved like wraiths flitting between the debris. The edge took a glancing hit to the port stabilizer. "Evasive pattern, Delta 12, Dorian shouted. Chen's fingers danced across controls. Shields at 70%. "Can't get a lock on them. They're phasing in and out like ghosts. They're using technology stolen from the weave," Lise realized. "It's an abomination," any counter, Dorian asked. "Yes," she said, her voice trembling with purpose. "But I'll have to use the core fragment." From beneath her robe, she pulled a shard of the cradle, pulsing gently with golden light. "Liz, if you burn out again, I won't," she said. "Not this time." She interfaced directly with the ship's systems, fusing the core fragment into the edge's neural matrix. The effect was immediate. The ship sang. Not a metaphor, the ship emitted harmonics that disrupted the enemy's phase cycles. The cloaked craft blinked into visibility. "Targets acquired," Chen yelled. Fire breached, 2 enemy ships were destroyed, a third crippled and spinning, but a fourth breached the lower hull.